Now, when you hear third-party controller, you probably wince and think of all the times you were player 2 and had to use the crusty, dusty Mad Catz controller of days of yore. And it had this weird rattle inside of it. It was in some sort of translucent plastic that always had some version of RGB that looked terrible. The joystick never felt quite right. There was always a super weird turbo mode, and it, of course, was wired. I'm happy to say that those days are mostly over. The Nixie Switch Pro controller got a review from our participant that said that playing on it was transforming the entire Switch landscape compared to playing on regular Joy-Cons, which is what I had in the past. That one participant was my dad, but I wholeheartedly agree. This controller does have some design quirks of being a third party, and I'll talk about that later, but I genuinely can see why this is 5 stars on Amazon. This thing is amazing. At just $30, half the price of a Switch Pro controller, you get pretty much the entire experience of a Switch Pro controller, plus some jankiness here and there that would be smoothed out with a first-party controller. To talk about the third-party effect, this controller does have it. It has a turbo button that when you press can make your controller do multiple actions at once, which sounds exactly like a good old-fashioned Mad Catz controller back in the day. But this turbo button has many other features that I want to talk about that actually deserves praise. I hate that it's a turbo button. I hate that it has the stupid multi-touch function that can make you program a button to do multiple things. But at the same time, what it allows you to do is map the buttons on the back of the controller, which I'll get to later, and it allows you to change the RGB. Before we go any further, I just want to say this is not a sponsored video. I know that I am singing praise to this thing, but honestly, I think the reason why is it deserves it. To be fair, I have not used this for a long period of time, and I will talk about some cons that come with this controller as well. It is not a perfect thing, and I don't want to set it up as one. So if I press the home button, it'll start to connect to the Switch. As you can see, it connected to the Switch. It does have one touch wake up, which means that press one button, press the home button, and it wakes up the Switch. No jankiness there. I only had some issues with syncing, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But you press this dumb turbo button, and then you press on a joystick. And it changes colors. And it has quite a few different modes, all of which change the color. Static color, rainbow breathing, and multicolor breathing. It doesn't look bad for being an RGB controller. As you can see, even in this sort of camera state, it's a little bit understated, which I appreciate. I would rather not have RGB and save some battery life, because battery life is something on this controller that's a con. But again, it's a knockoff controller. I am not done singing praise to this thing just yet. Now, full disclosure, I have never used a Switch Pro controller, and I am sure that it is better than this controller ever. But we are going to compare these two controllers for a second. Which one do you think has back paddle? Which one do you think doesn't require a sync button, just the touch of 2 triggers? But most impressively, which one feels better to you? I'm giving it to this one, because it feels a little bit heftier. And I'm sure whatever this textured grip is that's on it is some sort of pleather, and it's not made of premium materials. But it feels 10 times better than whatever stupid grip Microsoft put on the Xbox One S controllers. The joysticks feel premium. The D-pad, plastic, but tactile. Home button right in the middle is always nice. Plus and minus buttons are up here. This does trip me up every now and again. I end up taking accidental screenshots because I always think the buttons are here, because that's how the Xbox controllers are laid out. USB-C charging, and then of course, 2 triggers on the back. These triggers could use to be better. There's not a whole lot of actuation to them. It's just click, click, and there's no, it could use to be a little bit deeper in my opinion. The buttons, plastic, but fine. They don't feel as good as the Xbox, but they feel better than the Switch. The Switch does have a little bit more tactile feedback, but because these buttons are bigger and this controller just fits so much better than Joy-Cons, I love it so much. I just launched a game in the living room while I was pressing around buttons because this thing automatically synced. Now the back paddles are a third-party controller touch. Part of me gets it. They're okay to have. Maybe you'll like them using Smash Bros. I'm not a super competitive Switch player, but at the same time, they're the cheapest feeling material out of the entire controller. They're just plastic, and it requires quite a bit of force to press them down. I wish that it would have been softer, or like Xbox Elite controllers where you have a paddle to press on that sends it to the button as opposed to just a straight up button, because it is a hard button to press compared to every other button on this controller. Not only this, but it is a pain in the ass to map, because first of all, the manual, of course, as with any cheap controller, does not give you standardized English, and it's hard to follow the directions when they are given in such a way that make no sense. And I kind of had to figure it out myself. And even then, I have one button on here, it's this one, that if I press it, I tried to make it crouch, but my character will crouch, move forward left, and then stand back up. And I guess that's because it also has macro functions, so you can map more than one function to these buttons, which is nice. And I think that if you kind of learn how to use it, it could be advantageous in certain games. I'm not a super heavy Switch player, so Mario Party doesn't really need these back buttons, but I can see their usefulness. I just wish they were made of a higher quality. This button on the back I thought was a turbo button. It's right here in the middle, as you can see. You press it, it turns the controller off. And if you press it, it doesn't turn it back on. You require the home button to turn the controller back on. You require to hold the home button to turn the controller back on. But as you can see, I'm far away from my Switch and it's sunk. The one complaint that I have is that although this is USB-C charging, which is, their website says 6 to 8 hours. For me, it's lasted even less. I am playing a game outside right now and I don't know what game it is. So as you can see, I'm going through all the colors and my character is grunting menacingly. There is no off on RGB. How I wish there was, because RGB, despite it's probably pennies to manufacture, which is why they put it on third-party controllers to look pizzazzy, kills battery life. And this only has a 500 milliamp hour battery. And granted, I haven't charged it all the way, but I have charged it about half, and half drains a lot faster than I'd like it to. So that is the biggest drawback of this controller. If you are willing to charge it every day, every few hours, get lunch, charge it, come back. It does charge pretty fast. I'd say about half an hour will get you about 2/3 of battery life on it, if not 3/4. So that's not terrible. It's just the fact that you have to charge it all the time. Other than that, there are very few cons to this controller. Back pedals suck. Battery life doesn't last. But you could tell me that this was a Switch controller, and I'd believe you. I love it so much. And I recommend it to anybody who isn't going to go into Super Smash Bros. Leagues. But if you are a casual Switch enjoyer, I wholeheartedly recommend this controller. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, do what you usually do, and as always, buy yourself something nice.